So then I go through. So then I start RASP. I can't even remember when I started RASP, but
so RASP is the entry program for lack of a better word?
For Ranger Regiment, yes.
To get
and this
into
is where we'll
regiment.
get into yes.
And this
is where we'll get into the separate Ranger School and
Gotcha.
RASP. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can be in Ranger Regiment, and there are an astounding amount of people, not just in the military, in the Army, that don't quite understand this. You know, it's not astounding. You're not in the unit, whatever, but you can be in Ranger Regiment and you don't have to have a tab.
Right.
You don't. They have a lot of privates and specialist turds. You always need turds to do the turd work. So they have those. And sometimes they'll send people who are exceptional straight to Ranger School. But the only time they do that is if they've been in the Army for a time and then they join the regiment. Like, they're never going to send
a brand
straight
new
away
private right out of basic
I don't
training.
care how much they trust you. They're just not. Especially after RASP.
Right.
Yeah. So that is a clear distinction. And really quickly, too, I read this article before I get into it. I read this. This is stupid, yo. But I read this article. There was some controversy. Can't remember who it was. They were running for office this year.
Oh, the
You
Ranger.
saw it.
Yeah, I did.
I
Who was that?
cracked me up. Yeah, Google it.
I'm going to Google it, yeah.
Google it, Jamie. Anyways. No, but yeah, like...
Was it a congressman?
It was... I don't remember. But anyways, the point of it, the story was going to be... someone claimed that they were an Army Ranger. Well, they had the tab. They weren't in the unit. And if you ask any person who's not an asshole, the tab is harder to achieve than the scroll. For sure. Like, this isn't... I mean, the scroll's not easy to achieve, but it's not Ranger School. Like, it's not. So, yeah, I'm curious to hear what it is.
It looks like... This is from the Washington Post... it was a New Hampshire Senate candidate, Corky Messner.
His name's Corky.
Corky Messner.
His name's Corky.
Corky Messner.
Interesting. My name's Cyril, so whatever.
Part of the voiceover ad here, it says, as an Army captain and Ranger during the Cold War, he led our men in our battle against socialism. I wonder, actually, you know what? No, the Vietnam War was fought over communism, so that's fair. But I was about to say, what kind of, like, that just sounds like a campaign. Like, I fought socialism. Like, did you actually, like, fight? Like, no, you did not. So it says the facts here, simply put, there is the Ranger School, and there is the Ranger Regiment, a special operations unit. Anyone in the military can attend Ranger School, whether or not they've served in the Ranger Regiment.
Correct.
And that's, I think the distinction was, if you can get your tab, but did you ever serve with, one of the battalions?
Yeah, one of the battalions, yep. And... if you want to achieve leadership in Ranger Regiment, you must have tab. There are a few people who don't, and they're bitch boys to everybody else in their mind. I'm not kidding. Like, it is...
So it's
a mentality, you know?
They would be the second or first lieutenant.
They're in the S1. They're in the... Yes.
Colonel.
They're in the supply.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep, and this is my opinion. Never name names. Just what I observe.
Sure.
My opinion is there were a lot of guys who not even were too lazy to achieve the tab, but wanted to stay in the unit. But like maybe were older, and they invested a lot of time and identity into who they were and being a part of this unit. And even though they couldn't achieve the tab, they would fight tooth and nail to stay. And look, at the end of the day, if you fight tooth and nail to stay at a unit, a lot of times you can. Because if they can just find a place for you and I can forget about you, that'll happen. It can. And we're not talking about lazy people. We're talking about people who do love their job and they're good soldiers. They just, for one reason or another, they can't get through Ranger School, but they want to be in Ranger Regiment. But they're an E6.
Sure.
How do you do that when you don't have a tab? So it's just an interesting, you know.
But so that leads me to my next question: is that if in order to be in the regiment, do you have to go through RASP?
Yes.
Regardless.
So
you could everybody there.
You could have a tab and have to go through RASP.
So everybody there's been through at minimum.
Yes.
RASP. Okay.
Yep. And at one point it was RIP. It was 3 weeks.
Okay.
Ranger in Processing, I think it stood for. And then it went to RASP, which is 8 weeks.
So you did RASP?
Yes.
Then did you go to Airborne?
Yes. After.
Like immediately after?
Yep.
Okay.
Again, the way that the Army wasted so much time training me for what it got out of me. For sure. Because the confusion that whole year of 2013, because of not a lot of 35 Golfs going there. Honestly, even 35 Golfs going there, like, you get a certain type of person in intel. Not all of them. Probably less of them will make it through a RASP program than an infantry guy, right? Let's not kid ourselves. So there was just a lot of confusion of like, what's supposed to happen? How do we get your orders? So after RASP, I had to wait a while to get airborne orders. The rest of my class went to airborne first, and I had to wait because if you don't follow, and you know this, everything in the military is so static in one path. If your route goes outside of it, everything's broken. We can't find your orders. What are you doing here? Like,
people don't know who you are.
Yeah.
What the hell you're doing?
So all these infantry guys that march in a RASP and airborne and go, no problem.
Yeah.
But like, you're like, who are you? Like, so it was interesting. But yeah, I did go through airborne. Airborne is so easy. Like, it's funny growing up. I know I say a lot of tidbits. I'm sorry, but here's another one. It's funny growing up, and especially Band of Brothers I loved.
Okay.
Oh, do you like that show?
Yeah.
You have this like idea of what airborne school is, right? And this is this way in a lot in life. You have this idea. You're just like, oh, it's so hard. What a badge of honor. No. No. If you can unfearfully get out of the plane and land and walk in, you will pass airborne school, okay?
Sure.
It's not a selection at all anymore. It's just, I don't know why they have airborne school.
It's gone from a selection to a certification.
Correct. I don't know why they have airborne school. Who has airborne in anywhere? Since Vietnam.
They have Vietnam? I think they did one jump in Iraq. I think there was one jump in Iraq.
One. I believe
there was only one.
I believe it. Right. And look,
I think the biggest thing about schools, though, is, and well, I don't know if you know this.
Go ahead.
When you get to the board to become a sergeant in E5 or in E6, when you start going through that process,
I never went through that process. So.
You have to get points. Mm-hmm. So your PT scores were.
Yes, I do know that. Yeah.
Doing airborne, doing air assault, ranger, Pathfinder,
and you're on this big ass list, right, of everybody in the army.
Tons of points, yeah.
Right. And you can jump over them.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. So for me to go from E5 from E4 to E5, I had got it a little quicker than everybody else that I had come in with. So
why? Because of who you are, or because they afford you opportunities for points?
Well, sure, but because I had excellence in cavalry. I was the only person. So you know how there's an EIB.
Oh, yes.
There technically is an excellence in armor and excellence in cavalry. And you have to go through
a
similar process.
Holy shit.
Because it's not.
Nah, it's not as well known. Yeah.
It's not. It's the same exact thing, pretty much. Like, you've got to show weapons proficiency. You have to be athletic.
There's so many awards. There's plenty we don't know. So.
Tons.
But yeah.
The only reason why I got it before everybody else did was because I was the only one who could pass excellence in cavalry or excellence in armor. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think those schools exist.
What does that take? Do you mind getting
that
excellence?
Same thing as excellence in
like shooting
infantry. Yeah, shooting, weapons proficiency, land nav, being able to call for fire.
Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Cover and concealment. For cavalry, you have to be able to set up.
Get your 9-line in. No, I got you though.
It's the same process, and then at the end of it, you do a 20-mile ruck march or whatever it is to see who falls out. Yeah. You get smoked the whole time. Yeah. They'll ask you questions.
Yeah.
Hey, can you recite AR 670-1? Bullshit like that. If you can get through all that, then you get your EIB or EIA or EIC. And I was the only one who did it. And when they did it for me, we did it in Iraq, and we did it with all the tankers. So for me, I was the 19 Delta. That's a cavalry scout, and we always get lumped in with armor. We're under the armor branch. So anything we do tends to fall under or fall in with tankers. So when they did the excellence in armor, they had all the tankers and this one platoon of scouts had to participate in it. And out of all of them, I was the only one that could make it to the end.
Oh, nice.
And because of that, that's what gave me the extra 50 points, which bumped me to the top of the list over the threshold to get my E5 before everybody else did.
You being through this process, is there a way to kind of cheese grate people through if they don't have the points? Or is it no, you got to have the points or
there's only one way to do it. And it's taking those courses. And I forget what they were called, but the Army used to have a portal. I'm sure they still have this portal where you, as an NCO, could take these different courses. And they were the same shit you've been drilled into your head the entire time. So AR 670-1, the Scout Manual.
Or even the corporate sex harassment stuff too?
No. This was specific to your MOS
training that makes sense. Because for promotion. Okay, that makes sense.
And you had to pass the test. And there was not a quote-unquote way to cheat, but you could print out material, you could reference it while you're taking the test, but for the most part, if you either know the material or you don't. And I think there was timers on the test that you had to take.
I'm sure, yeah.
So you had to do X amount of tests. Yeah, there's other ways to get points, but the biggest ways to get points, have a good NCOER, Actually, I don't even know if that was one of them. No, it wouldn't have been because you can't have an NCOER if you're not an NCO yet. But schools, PT tests,
the board,
qualifications, the board.
That's so political, though. I always heard that was political. No?
In what way?
Well, because people are making the decision. Like, I know that there's... I don't know that much about the board. There's probably like a standard, right? Or things they're looking for, right? But they are still making that decision, right? Like they are.
Yeah, they make that decision, right? But you still have to impress.
It's not like points or not.
No, but you have to impress. Yeah, if you go in there and they ask you a question and you go,
it's like an interview. That makes sense.
It is like an interview. It's a very grilled.
Oh, I'm sure.
They just grill the shit out of you. They ask you all the questions. You got to answer all the questions. If you can't, then get out. Come back next month because you suck.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Airborne wasn't hard, man. I don't know if anybody ever listens to this. I hope I don't offend people, but
I'm sure someone will be offended by anything.
What can you do? Yeah, I was the greatest airborne, okay, whatever guy. But yeah, after that, I finally got to my unit. I did 2 deployments. The first deployment was what we talked about earlier. When you're in regiment, you have that 4-4-4 cycle.
Yeah,
and again, I don't know if it's this way now. Actually, I looked up regiment. I wrote notes even before you brought up we were doing this. I was writing notes. I think we talked about this many times before when you finally were like, I'm ready to go to do this. But,
yeah.
So I was thinking about just like, oh boy, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
We were talking about the 4-4-4 cycle.
Oh yeah. So I was thinking about just like how different it was. And
so go into that real quick because obviously if anybody ever listens to this, they don't know what 4-4-4 is.
Yeah, so when I was in... Oh, and that's what I was saying. I don't know if it's still that way now. That's what I was saying. But when I was in a calendar year, you'd have 3 phases. One phase would be deployment. The next phase would be recovery, training.
And then deployment.
Well, not training for deployment. Training like SEER training, crazy stuff you would go to. Like
gotcha. School.
Because you don't get 4 months off. That's not how that works.
Right.
You get the 2 weeks. It's a less grind because you're not in... get ready for deployment mode. But yeah, you're still going out to like different, stuff like that. And then the next 4 is getting ready for deployment.
And that is specific to, at that point, it's classified, but you probably know what region you're going to.
Yes.
You're training specific to, whether it's a dialect or the area.
You might not know as the low guy, but someone knows.
Yeah.
Someone knows. Yes. Absolutely, for sure.
And they're building that training plan, hopefully, to reflect what you're going to encounter.
Yes. And in that way, it's actually not, when the military is not super practical with a lot of things, and that's not that bad. But it's just because of the kind of unit they are. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's the thing. So counter to that, I was in the regular army. I was in the 1st Cavalry Division out of Fort Hood, Texas, and for us, it was 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. So 1 year you would train for your deployment. You would do your deployment for a year. When you get back, there's and I was telling you this earlier, there's like this 6-week period that everybody, they PCS or they ETS or they get their new duty orders and then you
not even go to like the SEERs and trainings and stuff. No, just like
this is like
all the
hey, you're going to Fort Lewis, or you're going to Fort Drum, and a bunch of people from Drum are coming here.
Resetting everything, and then...
Although, to be fair, Fort Hood is known as the Black Hole. Like, I have met guys that have spent their entire military career at one post.
Some people wouldn't hate that. Some people would.
I wasn't about it.
No. You're not from there. You've never struck me as, and you can always correct me if I'm wrong, especially when I'm talking about you, but you never struck me as someone who I'll just sit here and it's fine. Like, no, experiencing is fun, and get around and see new places, and change isn't fearful, I don't think, for people like us. So no, I agree.
But that's the difference though between regular army and your unit is you have a 444, so you're constantly.
Yes, and to that point, that was for infantry,
right? For you though.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to. I've never thought about it in such a contrast to what the infantry guys were doing. So bear with me as I try to I don't. Again, I'm speaking just from being around them. I didn't actually do it, but from what I was around, it really did sound like the infantry side of regiment was more of a military structure, like you would think, like very strict. And they were the combat guys, right? They have a lot to deal with, so very strict, very regimented, very. You don't want those guys to make mistakes, so there's just a certain kind of mentality and training that goes into that, and that just wasn't what it was for us. Like I felt like. A ranger guy enters an infantry unit, and there's such a structure. There's a path. There's the platoon I went in, again, Intel was so new and Rangers even still. We had a platoon sergeant who wasn't even our MOS. So when I went there, it was a lot more where I was throwing darts at a wall. It wasn't 4-4-4 hard. We know what we're doing each phase 1, 2, and 3. It was just you were showing up and you were. The nice thing about being in regiment in my job is we were doing our job every day.
Okay.
You would not in the regular army, and by that I don't mean like we were collecting intel in real time and helping people in real time. I was like we had because the job we had, it took fancy computers and software. And you had to have that available to you. And, military is always can't even buy batteries. So so we were able to go in and practice our job every day. And that's pretty much what it was almost like it was almost like an office job with half the military mindset. Like you still had to go to PT, you knew you still had to. But yeah, it was different. It wasn't so regimented. Our platoon sergeant knew the unit he was in, didn't like that it wasn't. So I think the way he adjusted for it was by being a lot of an asshole. Sure. I feel like he knew that was coming. And maybe in that way he tried to keep some, but yeah, it was just really different. And you wouldn't know if you were deploying until you like you're in first, there's first, second, and third bat, right? First is in Savannah, Georgia, second's in Columbus, Georgia, third's in outside of Seattle, I believe, Washington.
Yeah, Fort Lewis. Yeah,
yes, Fort Lewis, correct. Thank you. You knew when your cycle was coming up. You're in first bat and we're coming up. That's not what it was like where I was. You would get there, you'd be new. You knew you'd be on the depth chart because there was only one of us that would deploy each time, and there was 12 or 13 of us. So when you showed up and you didn't have a deployment, you knew that your name was on the depth chart for deployments, but you had to be selected, and they wouldn't select it. They wouldn't just tell you you're with first bat and here we go. They would just because honestly, to be fair, they had the luxury of choosing the best people out of who they had for my MOS because they only had to set one, and so they would tell you like a month or two before, like, oh, you earned it, like.
So for that, it's funny that you say like you earned it, like, oh, here you can go to a war zone. This is your reward,
right?
But either way.
That's how we viewed it. I wanted to, yeah.
I think most people do, but pulling yourself out of it years later, you're just kind of like, oh,
it's different.
It's a weird mentality.
It is, It's in a unique perspective.
But my question in that is, so you were a 35 Golf, and there's a bunch of signal intelligence MOSs. So in that group of 12 or 13, were you the only 35 Golf?
No, that's my platoon.
Okay.
So another thing is, okay, when I say 35 Golf was new to regiment, the job wasn't necessarily new to regiment. There's also another MOS called 12 Yankee, which is basically, it was like I never really understood what it was. I still don't, and I worked with them. It was basically like a map maker of some sort. They were like, can you Google 12 Yankee real quick? Yeah. I don't, let's both do it. Let's see here. Geospatial engineer. There you go.
Geospatial
And basically what they would do is they would take different data that overlays like maps and stuff, and they would just build things that you needed. Like if you needed a map that pointed out specific things or like something that would really pop something off so that for whatever strategy or plan you had, they would build that. So most of them were 12 Yankees, and only some of us were Golfs. They were transitioning to being 35 Golfs from 12 Yankee, because a few of those guys changed their MOS after I had left to 35 Golf because they were asking for it. So it was, again, it was
because it sounds like a
very different than your
of bullshit that was very new,
so new,
and that's why you had no idea what the hell you were doing.
It was way more, and I learned this after the fact. It's way more unstructured than what a lot of my other AIT friends who went to Korea or wherever went through.
But that's because it was an established path, and that's 90% of the Army.
The like linear static.
This is what you're doing.
Exactly. Yep.
You do this for 2 years. You do this. You do that. For me, before I got out, because I had done 2 tours, I was an NCO. I was an E5.
We both did 2 tours. You much longer. Go ahead.
I didn't go to the E6 board because I was getting ready to go out. But had I continued my path, the next step is drill sergeant.
Yeah, once you do
the drill path, then you go back and you become a platoon sergeant.
Right.
After you do platoon sergeant, you typically cycle through some sort of training whether it be cadre, whether it be like doing BNOC or ANOC or
right.
warrior leader course. Once you do that, then you come back and do another stint. Maybe you become a first sergeant or a master sergeant. Like
it's not like that in Ranger.
There's a specific path that you
so different in Ranger. Even for infantry too. Even though infantry was more like a regular army unit than we were, not because that's not negative. That's just because they were. And it's not negative at all. I'm giving them props. No, I'm giving them props. Oh, okay. They had a combat job. They had difficult jobs.
Sure.
You need to have a certain training regiment. That's different than the goofy ass cross-eyed kid on the computer. Like it's different. So they were a little closer, but even still, like they didn't have to do drill sergeant shit. They don't have to do that stuff.
Yeah, but for Rangers, don't they end up doing RASP? Don't they run Ranger school?
They asked them.
So they have a version of a path.
That's true. Good point.
That isn't.
And a lot of those RASP instructors didn't want to be there, told to be there. Right? Yeah, you're right. Well,
because nobody wants to do RASP.
Nobody wants to do basic training. Like it's very demanding. So
RASP, funny.
Second week is hell week. I mean, just like in basic training, there's always going to be a week where like these sergeants don't go home. They have to be there. It's hell week. They have to literally fuck you up for a week.
Yep.
They don't get to go home.
24/7.
You're the person getting fucked up, and you're just like, how I can't believe this sucks. You don't even think about that. Like their life sucks too. They don't get to fucking go home. So